So I'm here today with one of my good friends and a person that's become a great mentor and a trusted ally and teacher over the years as we've lived here in Cheyenne. I'm here with my good friend Steve Lee, recently retired from the Union Pacific Steam Program. And we're here today in Lyons Park near the 1242 steam locomotive, and Steve and I came out here today to talk a little bit about the locomotive, and we're also going to talk about a project that Steve and I and a few of us at Wasatch Railroad are working on together. And so we're just going to talk a little bit about history and things that have been going on. But before we get into all the history part, Steve, you've been retired now since January 1st. What have you been doing since January?
I've been doing a lot of reading, I've been doing some researching, and I've been doing a little work for Wasatch, and a whole lot of relaxing.
Over the years working with the railroad, there wasn't much relaxing time, was there?
No, there wasn't. It was a very hectic existence, especially during the last few years with the steam program. Between the pre-planning of the trips and the absolute operation of the trips, plus the other things they would throw at you that you had to do, the snow plows and things of that nature, there wasn't a whole lot of downtime.
Now, your family's happy to have you home. Are they ready to throw you out already?
No, they're not ready yet. Karen's happy to have me around the house. She says it feels like she got a present out of the whole thing.
A lot of days missed from home, isn't there? And Steve, you've got a couple of grandkids here in Cheyenne, so that's been a lot of fun for you too, hasn't it?
Right. I've had a lot more time to spend with them. I'm getting to know them better than I did their parents.
Yeah. Well, that's neat. That's good for you. I know you told me the other day that it's T-ball season.
It's T-ball season, and Dylan, who's 5 years old, is playing T-ball. And it's fun to watch them. They whack the ball and then look at you like, what do I do now? But it's fun to watch every game. He and his teammates get just a little bit better.
Yeah. And
they get a little bit more skilled. You don't have to tell them as much what to do. And it's fun to watch the progression.
Yeah. That's neat. That's neat. Now, Steve, I know this because we've stayed close to each other here the last couple months, but you've been out doing some other consulting work, and you've been out with some other groups, one of which, the Feather River Group. Tell us a little bit about the Feather River Group and what you've done out there with them.
They have a project going to restore an 060 switch engine, the Western Pacific number 165. And I was out there in April and early May, and we lifted the boiler and frame off of the wheels and set that over to the side so they can do the boiler work, and we can send the wheels out and have them worked over. There's another work session later on this month. I won't be able to make that one, but there's one in October. I'll be out there for that one. And we should be finishing up the boiler work, and hopefully the wheel work will be done by then too. If not, we'll just do what we can.
Now, if I understand right, within a couple of years that engine's going to be running, or within a year?
Within a couple of years, I'd say. We always allow a little extra time. You know, steam engine projects, no matter how long you think it's going to take or how much you think it's going to cost, you always undershoot it.
Yeah.
No matter how hard you try. So I'd rather say 2 years and have it running in one than I would say 1 year and have it running in two.
Yeah. The folks at the Feather River, a number of them are Union Pacific employees. And that's how you came to know a number of them, isn't it?
Right, quite a few of them. First time we went out there in 1991, when we double-headed to Sacramento for the second rail fair, the first rail fair they went across the Southern Pacific, but the second rail fair was after the Western Pacific merger, so we went Union Pacific all the way, which meant we were on the ex-Western Pacific from Salt Lake City all the way out to Sacramento and back. And our pilot crews were all ex-Western Pacific employees, and the vast majority of them were members of the Feather River Group.
Mm-hmm. And that's created some bonds and friendships that have gone back now lots of years.
Yeah, it goes all the way back to 91, and our steam crew and the railroad itself works pretty closely with the Feather River Group, and vice versa. They do a lot of favors for each other, and you get a lot of stuff done that way. Some of it involves everyday freight service, and some of it involves special events like the steam trains when we run them out there. We try to do extra displays around Portola, things in the Feather River Canyon just for that group to help pay them back for the kindnesses they've shown us.
Yeah. Now, Steve, let's rewind for a minute. You said that you've spent a lot of time reading, particularly history stuff, And you told me the other day about some interesting World War II history that relates back to your family. Go into that a little bit.
Yeah, my father was a paratrooper in World War II. He said he got paid to jump out of perfectly good airplanes. And he was with the 11th Airborne Division in the Philippines and later on in the occupation of Japan. And he was like most World War II veterans. He never talked about it very much. So he died 8 years ago. And I've been doing a little research and a lot of reading, mostly reading, and my nephew is doing a lot of research. And we're trying to find out where he was, when he was, some of the battles he was involved in, things of that nature. And my nephew has searched the National Archives and got his service records, and we found out what battles he was in, and we found out a lot of the places that he was stationed and assigned during his training and during his service. So it's we're unraveling a mystery a little bit at a time.
Now, when you talk about history, you're really involved in that era. That's really something that's fascinated you for a long time, isn't it? The whole World War II era.
The World War II era. It was a time like no other in the country, and of course we're losing our World War II generation at a rapid rate. And when you think all the history's been written, it's just scratched the surface.
Yeah.
There are so many people and so many stories, so many things that went on back then, so much different than it is today.
Yeah.
And in a lot of ways it was better, some ways it was worse, of course. But the solidarity and people coming together to achieve a goal was something to be admired.
Now, we're sitting here in the park today at Lions Park in front of what we can consider a piece of World War II history as well. You had told me a couple days ago that the 1242, its last assignments were related to, in part, final assignments related to World War II. Isn't that right?
Right. On the Saratoga branch, hauling copper ore out of encampment, and of course coal and lumber out of Saratoga. And it was a busy engine during World War II. That particular branch line started out as a separate railroad. It was the Saratoga and Encampment Valley. And it ran off of the UP at Walcott Junction, Wyoming, and ran 44 miles, I believe it was, up into Encampment. And it was a light branch line with some pretty tiny bridges in it, so they used these two locomotives, the 1242 and the 1243, were just small enough. They were just large enough to get the work done, but small enough to handle the light bridges and the sharp curves up there. These two locomotives were identical. They were both built in the same batch, 1890, and they were superheated in the early 1900s and changed from slide valves to piston valves. And that's as far as the modernization on them went. They were still hand-fired coal burners. They were Stevenson valve gear, inside link. And there are still a couple of people around here in Cheyenne who fired these locomotives, the 42 and the 43, on the Saratoga branch, because the 42 ran until 1954, and the 43 ran until 1957 on that branch. And that was a low seniority job up there because it was away from home and because it was a hand-fired engine. So generally when a man hired out as a fireman, as soon as he got qualified, he got forced up there. Until somebody younger than him hired out. So there's still some guys here that can tell you stories about those two locomotives.
Now, by all rights, in 1954, this engine should have, and the sister engine, should have been scrapped, because we've already, into 1954, scrapped bigger engines than this one.
That's exactly right. The only reason they survived was because of the light bridges on the S&EV. Mm-hmm. That's the only thing that kept them going. And they served faithfully for, well, from 1890 till the mid-1950s, so the railroad did get their money's worth out of them.
Yeah. Now, I had been under a misunderstanding that you straightened up for me the other day. I had believed that this locomotive had returned back to Cheyenne before it was officially out of service, but you had told me that it actually stayed in Rawlins, which was another reason why it maybe missed the scrapper's torch. Isn't that right?
Yeah, that's another reason. They had the 42 and the 43, both were in the roundhouse at Rawlins. And they were more interested in scrapping the bigger engines because the bigger engines had more steel and therefore they were worth more money. They were gathering up the bigger engines and sending them to Cheyenne. These two kind of got overlooked. Of course, they would fit in the shadow of a big engine.
Yeah.
But they moved them to Laramie. And then they brought the 42 over here and gave it to the city of Cheyenne, moved it out here to Lions Park. The 43 stayed in Laramie for a while, and then it came to Cheyenne, and I'm told about 1962 or 63. And it was in Cheyenne until the late 1990s, and we moved it to Omaha and put it inside the Durham Museum there. And the 42 has been here in Lyons Park ever since.
In the late 80s, before the Wyoming-Idaho Centennial, you and a few others actually considered restoring the 1243 and decided against it because of boiler issues, isn't that right?
Right. It had, the last time they had ran it, they didn't drain it, and they let everything in it freeze, including the boiler. And it had some major boiler damage. It could have been done, like anything, it could have been done given enough time and enough manpower and enough money. But then you're left with a 100-year-old hand-fired steam engine that you're not going to be able to do much with. It was Drew Lewis's idea to get it going, and we did an assessment on it and told him what we'd found, and we offered him an alternative. If we can't get this going, if you don't want to spend the money to get it going, or if getting it going is not practical, we can put it on a flat car and we can haul it around and show it off. And that alternative is the one they chose. We put the 1243 up on a specially built flat car, and we took it with us on the Wyoming and Idaho Centennial train. We took it with us to California in Rail Fair 99, and we took it several other places to show it off, and then we took it down to Omaha and put it in the museum down there.
So as a fun piece of history related to the rail fan side of things, I was about 14 when you did the Idaho-Wyoming Centennial train, and I chased you from Laramie to Rawlins, where the highway parallels the track most of the way. And I remember watching closely because I knew that locomotive was coming off that flat car at 70 miles an hour flying down that main line.
I can guarantee you that's the fastest that locomotive has ever been.
And ever will be, isn't it?
Ever will be, yeah.
Yeah, that was neat. You had a lash up of the 8444 at the time. That was one of its last trips before it went back to 844.
That's right.
The 6900 and then the 1243 on the flat car.
Right.
Triple header.
Triple header.
With
and
with
that
a
was
10-wheeler.
Yeah, with a 10-wheeler, and that was the tallest one of the bunch sitting up on the flat car.
Yeah, it was.